My name is Jason Hayato Higa. I'm a localization lead at Exceed Games, and I did help localize Akiba's Trip HD.
So Jason, talk about this game. What is Akiba's Trip all about?
Akiba's Trip was originally on the PSP in 2011. It was originally Akiba's Trip, and then it became Akiba's Trip Plus, which is an expansion. From that, we brought it over to the US. This is the first time Akiba's Trip on the PSP is coming over to the US. We originally did Akiba's Trip was Undead and Undressed, which was number 2. So 2 came before 1 in the West. So this is more like bringing the original title to the West, and it still has the same, kind of like charm as the second one. It's kind of confusing, but that's how we try to hold it for our audience.
It reminds me of that Final Fantasy thing where like 3 was 4 and in the US, or like that. Remember that weird thing is like we didn't.
Yeah, the number is like 3. Yeah, 3 is 6. Yeah, it's just
yeah, we
very
got them in
confusing.
weird order. So talk a little bit what you do in this game. You said it's a complete remaster of the PSP. Like what if for people who aren't familiar with the series, give like a brief description what this series is all about.
So the series, they're not really like, they're kind of like vampires, but they have they have different names. But they're essentially like living amongst humans, and some are trying to adapt with them, and some are actually trying to get rid of them and become the higher species. And you're playing the protagonist, unnamed protagonist. You get to name him, and you get caught up in this whole fiasco, and from that you make certain decisions with either like your human friends or your vampiric friends, and try to stop the main antagonist, and depending on your decisions it can affect the ending.
So it's like, I mean, this game for people who are, I mean, there was that, I wish I could remember what the game's called, but I can't remember what it's called right now because I haven't had my coffee yet. Like this is a game for people who really like JRPGs and a lot of the kind of the anime art style and stuff like that. Can you get into a little about like the type of game this people's made for and the type of people who will enjoy this game if they're fans of different games of the similar series or genre?
Sure. So it's actually like, it's very like like it's silly. It's not a very serious game. As you can tell, I mean, you're supposed to be stripping vampires in the sun. So but if it's to compare it to other games, I would say like it takes place in Akihabara, which is a district in Tokyo, or a city in Tokyo, and so it's like similar to, I would say, Yakuza, which that's supposed to take place in which is like Kamurocho, which is like another based on a real location in Tokyo. So it's all located in the one area, and then you go around interacting with other characters or other NPCs, and then everything is quote unquote open world, like everybody's doing their own thing, walking around. So it feels like you are in the actual location. Mind you that this is like made in 2011, so it's not like all the areas are still like the streets are all the same, but there's some stores that are obviously like different, but it is very much like one for one like placement of when it was of 2011 Akihabara.
Now, like, why do you think it takes so long sometimes for certain games in the East to reach a Western audience? Like in this case, 11 years for this game to make it over here. Because I know some of my friends, like they'll specifically buy import titles, for their PSP or for their Xbox, PlayStation or something, if something's not available here sometimes, and then try to painstakingly play through it, translating the Japanese with a book or their phone as they're trying to play. Why do you think games like that take so long to be localized in the West?
It's probably more for if if audiences are actually interested in it. Sure, they're like, smaller group, like, groups that like these kind of games, but will it will it be worth it for us to make it if it's just like, we only get like a little bit back. But I guess recently with all like, how popular Yakuza is being, with like, just shows you how Japanese culture is, starting to become more like I guess like mainstream. So more and more people are enjoying these kind of like, games that are not focused on like, Western towns. And it shows you like another side of like a culture that you might not be familiar with, and will probably bring more interest on, visiting these places in real life. So I think, yeah, that's what, usually it started with an Akiba's Trip 2 or Undead Undressed. It seemed like, a game that, looked nice and also very, very accurate to the original. And then since the Akiba's Trip Undead Undressed was so successful, yeah, it's like, let's definitely try to bring back HD.
And the game's coming out on Nintendo Switch, PC, and PS4, which is great. That's 3 more platforms, because you said it not only was this game only in the East before, but it was on the PSP, which was a pretty limited system, even for that time.
Yeah, the PSP obviously, has limitations. So we definitely try to, clean up the game, look much brighter. Since Akihabara is such a colorful place, we tried like, make sure that it, grab that essence and put it into this game.
Now, I know you only did the localization, didn't work on it, but did they have to recreate the game from the ground up and kind of like do a remake of it? Or are they able to take assets from the PSP game and tweak them to make them work with modern hardware?
We were able to like, tweak it a bit. Obviously, building from the ground up is definitely more time consuming. Does take a lot of time. So we were trying to grab as much as they try to grab as much as they can for their assets. But the PSP assets, like I said, it's like very limited, and you're playing on a very small screen. So they were just, as much as we can, we could use some old assets as well as new assets as well.
And then the game's coming out in July 20th. Is that correct?
Yes.
July 20th, 2021. And there's also multiple endings in this game. You talk about like the multiple endings bringing the RPG aspect to the game as well.
Yeah. So this game, there are actually like, I guess you could call them factions, but like 3 groups. Obviously, it's your friends, and then you have a group that's hunting these vampiric enemies, and then you have the vampiric group as well. So depending on your decisions or which way you're working with, because sometimes you can since it's an open world, you can basically attack anyone. So depending on like your reputation, it can affect the ending.
That's crazy, man. And where can people go to find out more information about this game and like go to support it when it comes out, which is on 3 platforms: PC, PS4, and Nintendo Switch?
So we probably we have our social media, so you can probably get most of your information from there. But we do also have a website as well, right, Mai? Yeah. So we have a website as well, so they can check that out. And